Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Rise and Thrive with Dr. J. Nicole, where we are rising in faith and thriving in purpose. And today we are going to be talking about something that's super important to all of us and is always going to need to be explored and unpacked. And that is the experience of Black men and mental health. Today, I am joined by my Howard brother. He's the son of Howard. We first met as students in the MSW program. You know, it's our 10-year anniversary. You know that? Like from when we started?
Incredible.
No,
8
graduation. So I've known you for 12 years and it's our 10 year this year. So
Wow.
hopefully you make it back for homecoming this year because we're trying to like get folks together. But we are joined by Mario Broussard II, LCSW. He is a licensed therapist in Maryland and Ohio. He is the founder and owner of Fresh Start Counseling. And I just remember when we met, you were always just like a good energy, a bright light in the program. And so I'm happy that you're here with me today to be able to talk about such an important topic. And so today's episode is called Unpacking the Pressure, Black Men, Mental Health, and the Power of Healing. And so today, Mario is going to help me unpack this, right? And we're going to have an unfiltered conversation about mental health, emotional freedom, and the unique healing journey of Black men. And as a clinician, a father, and a man of faith, Mario is going to open up about his personal story as well as give us some professional insight and what it truly takes for Black men to stop surviving and to start thriving mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So let's go ahead and just welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Listen, Doc, it is so good to be here with you. Thank you so much for sharing your platform and giving me this opportunity. I'm excited about this topic, passionate about it, but I'm so glad that we have outlets, and specifically this one, to be able to accommodate us talking on this most important topic. So thank you so much for having me.
Yes, 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 yes. So this is good, and I'm glad you accepted the invitation. And so, like God just works and moves, right? Like I said, we've known each other for 12 years, and I was just scrolling one day and I saw something. I was like, I need to have Mario on. We got to talk about this. And so, thank you for responding quickly and following up promptly so that we could get you in the studio here. So, Mario, as a therapist, what common internal struggles do you see in Black men that often go unspoken?
Yeah, there's three that come to mind. Fatigue
Mm,
is one of them. Listen, I've seen it manifest in my own life, but when a lot of my Black male clients show up to our sessions, when there is some trepidation about coming into and experiencing therapy for the first time, when we get past that part and I see the guard kind of come down, I then see the evidences of fatigue. It's almost like been running, been surviving,
yeah.
and this is actually a real safe space. So you get to see that fatigue manifest, but then also kind of the guard come down. The second one that I see is grief. We are experiencing losses on several
Yes.
levels. All of us, Black men, man, it's just we're often silent about all the levels and layers of grief that we're experiencing. And then there is anger.
Oh, yeah. That's the one I think we see the most, or at least
Yeah,
most notable.
yeah. Anger. And I think the fatigue happens because there's so much time spent trying to suppress and squelch the anger so that it doesn't manifest in the wrong spaces. So
Yeah.
there's just so much there.
Yeah, you're so right. And I talk with clients all the time about that internal battle. And I'm like, you're exhausted before you even come out here, out into the world and engage with the world.
Mhm.
You're exhausted from yourself, that internal fight. So I heard you say almost like you can look and see when you can tell that they like unpacked or put the burdens down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what does that look like with that moment when you can say, okay, barriers are down, guards are down? What does that look like?
Yeah, it usually comes from I guess a mutual self-disclosure,
Okay.
right? So they might just open up. So I'll give them maybe in our first session a brief rundown of who I am,
Mhm.
where I'm coming from, some of the hats that I wear. And even though it's not always mandatory that we as therapists give those types of rundowns like father, husband, parent, whatever. I just really, especially with my people, with our people,
Yeah.
I just go and initiate that, right? So that they're able to hopefully level. And then their reaction to that is often, man, I wasn't going to do this. My wife made me, or I was tired of running or whatever from it. And so I'm here. And already this is a better experience than I had anticipated. And so
Mhm.
that's where you start seeing that wall come down. And the conversation and the guidance just begins to flow. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that is. That is. And I love how you're saying that you use an appropriate self-disclosure
Yeah.
to create that safe space and build rapport to say, I
Mhm.
see you, I've lived, I'm not just like this perfect person over here, but like,
Yeah,
because people sometimes need to see themselves in who they are going to for support.
most
And I'm
certainly.
glad you can do that.
Yeah, black folk in general,
Mhm.
we got to know that you've lived some life because we come out the womb, fighting, really.
Right.
And so yeah,
Right,
yeah, yeah.
right. And then I do want to ask a question because you brought up grief,
Mhm.
and grief looks different per experience, per person. What are some of those markers or indicators that let you know that's grief if it's not
Yeah.
just self disclosure?
Yeah. So, some of those. So, first of all, I want to say that oftentimes we use anger as the cover up for everything,
Yes. Uh huh.
for depression, for grief, for fatigue, right? And so I don't always see that anger part, but oftentimes, when individuals start kind of running down what brings them to therapy or whatnot, inevitably it might be the loss of a job, it may be the loss of a person, place, or thing, right? That may bring tears.
Yeah.
See, that's what I get to see tears in my sessions from black men, right?
Love
And I
that.
get to see it sometimes first session,
Yes.
20 minutes in,
Yes.
right? And so now you talk about the person you lost 7 years ago, and you can cry about it like it happened earlier today, apparent grief, or you're speaking angrily about something, and it's as if it is happening right now.
Yeah.
There's some PTSD symptoms there, but that's also evidence of grief. And we emote differently
Mm-hmm.
as men, as black people in general.
Mm-hmm.
We emote differently for different reasons and in different ways. And so it's easier to detect that as a black male therapist.
That's good. And I'm so glad that you can see that and that you're clearly able to curate and create this space where that can happen in 20 minutes. And that's something that I always normalize with my clients. You gonna cry. Do never apologize for crying in these sessions. You're gonna cry. You need to cry. And then more recently, I've done research on, okay, not in-depth research, but I looked into it a little bit more about like what's in our tears and the different chemicals and
Wow.
how it helps because one, we can release like cortisol through our tears, right? Which is a stress reliever.
Mhm.
Our tears, and don't get me lying about the name of the specific chemical, but there's like a opioid that our body naturally produces that helps to relieve emotional and physical pain. So then we do feel better. And then that might be also sometimes why we sleep after, because one, we're also exhausted. But
Yeah.
like there's so much that are built into our tears and just like how we are set up. Like that's how great God and how intentional God is that He put
Man.
a pain reliever in our tears. And think about how much people don't cry or what they say about crying, right? We need
Right.
it. We need it. And it's so good for us. And I can share more about that with you later, but like really just normalizing crying. Like there was this reality TV person and she called it a crying tour. But she was not a mental health like professional, but like I was like that needs to be brought back. Like seriously, but like with a serious mental health focus.
Mhm.
So, Mario, How has your personal story informed your approach to like therapy and emotional healing with those that you work with and support?
Oh, man, that's loaded. My personal story, growing up navigating being a child of a single parent home, having access to my father, knowing that my father loved me,
Mhm.
all of that was present, but he wasn't in the home.
Yeah.
And then that causes mom to have to work 3
Mhm.
jobs. We're going and cleaning with her on 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of time to sit and feel, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so coming into adulthood, late teenagehood, early adulthood, I realized that I needed space to really kind of be able to process some of
Mhm.
the things that I was going through. And I know that that had to have been nothing but God because I didn't really have an example of that.
Okay.
But that opened up a lot of questions that I then had to start asking and facing. And this seems pretty vague, but I'm trying to sum up all these
I'm
years.
also not rushing you, bro. I'm also not rushing you.
But yeah, and then the mentorship that I did have,
Mhm.
I think God put some great people in my path and some great friends
Yeah.
that were going through some of the same things. And so we begin to have some of those conversations.
Mhm.
It wasn't so deep and inspirational in the moment. It might have come out in the form of a complaint. Man, my dad this or my mom can't afford to help me with this.
Yeah.
Man, me too.
Yep.
It would have been something like that, but we're getting it out.
Mhm.
We have a healthy community, but then we're also processing it in our own space. And so that led me to naturally kind of be this way.
Okay.
And then to understand that there was a profession that allowed me to help others do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, because, like, I remember just meeting you, you were present, is what
Mm,
I say I can remember about you. I don't remember if our first class was together, our first semester or second semester in the MSW, but I just remember, like, you were just, like, present, you were available, you engaged, like, in class, and, so that's really important, and I love that you had those earlier experiences because we never really just talked personally about background and all of that because, like, the way you presented, I just would have thought you had, like, a traditional home experience and upbringing.
yeah, yeah.
So this is great to like just learn more about the insight and just like the opportunities and the community that God like, exposed you to and allowed you to be a part of to now turn that into healing and be part of it. And I've learned with God like nothing's wasted, right? Like nothing, he's so intentional. And
Yeah.
so, like, you had to have that experience to really understand how important it is and be able to use that to say, you know what, this is what I need to create for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what helped you realize that you didn't have to be like hardened or strong, right? Because that
Mm,
easily could have been a reaction, like a response or like a consequence of it. Like when you talking about like the anger that is common in Black men.
yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and keep it real.
Please do.
And so growing up, there was, I mean, what we would describe now as homophobia,
Yeah.
really. Okay. So here I am. I realized that I was not the typical black male.
Mhm.
Okay. So I do identify as a heterosexual, right? So
Mhm.
that's not where I'm going with it. Where I'm going with it is, yes, many of us were raised by our mothers.
Yeah.
We are part of a matriarchal society within the black
Yeah.
community that manifests differently. And oftentimes it manifested for a lot of my contemporaries with anger, with living, acting out, being hard, like that's what we have to do.
Right.
Right. So what happened with me is I realized that I wasn't that type of person. That ain't me. So now I'm asking questions like, is something wrong with me
Whoa.
that I'm able to emote, that I'm able to sit with my feelings, that I'm not easily stirred or easily angered.
Mm.
And that was a tough road because now back then that was linked with like, you're a girly guy.
Yep.
Something wrong with you or whatever the case was. Right. If we're just keeping it real. And so I had to learn how to be secure in the fact that I'm not soft. I'm not hard, right? What I am is I'm healing.
Ooh, say that oh, that was good, Mario.
And those around me were struggling with that. It didn't make me any better, it didn't make them any worse, but I didn't recognize that God was leading me in a very intentional path of healing because I would have a frustration and I might spend time crying about it.
Yep.
I might write a poem
Come
about it.
on, expression.
Unless it was Tupac, or back then, or somebody like that in the form of a rap
Yeah.
song or something, we're not sitting down writing
But Pac
poetry, or at
was
least not
a poet.
publicly.
Pac was a poet. And let's
He
also
was.
remember Def Poetry Jam, all of that stuff came out in the 90s. People were expressing, but also what you and I know now, because also growing up in the 90s, right? Like and seeing a lot of these things, also grew up in the Midwest, right? So
Mhm.
I'm sure we experienced a lot of similar things.
Yeah.
But like what you're describing, who's considered hard were actually the most vulnerable. They were the
Yeah.
most impulsive. You were like you
Yes.
said, you were healing, but you were healthier because you were expressing. And so that
Yeah,
is showing more control. That is showing more maturity. That is actually more masculine. That you
man,
had space for that to be able to express it and find your sense of identity versus them being reactive and out of control. But
man.
it's something
And I
about
just
that
wanna speak.
anger, right? That
Yeah.
says that that's masculine.
And I want to speak to somebody with that because you hit it on the nail. The harder they seemed, the more vulnerable they were and the more impulsive. But the more impulsive, leading to something even as drastic or as negative as taking somebody else's life. Whatever that continuum of anger and expression and impulsivity was,
Mhm.
the more drastic the action, the more vulnerable the person really
Yep.
was. Because if I'm able to take your life like this, it's because I don't have any bandwidth to allow myself to process or feel how I'm really feeling because that leaves me open without a plan. And so I'm going to shut it down as fast as I can. They weren't evil people. Our contemporaries that went down paths like that were not evil people. They were vulnerable and they just had no way of how to express that.
No outlets, no coping mechanisms, no one's modeling it. And this is what it looks like. This is what strength looks like. And we also
Mhm.
saw, I don't know what it looked like. Where in Ohio did you grow up?
Columbus.
Okay, in Columbus.
Yeah.
So, like, in Columbus, I don't like what were the rates for being locked up, going to jail, people going to juvie. You know what I mean? Like, was that a high occurrence?
They were in line with whatever the national average was.
Okay.
Yeah, Columbus, had its pockets of suburbs and things like that
Hmm.
where you may be able to escape. But I actually didn't grow up in any of that. We had a decent house,
Hmm.
but we sat right there in the middle of
Yeah.
all of it. And so anybody could get it any day. You could find yourself. In fact, one of the ways that I know I was able to escape one of those statistical, lifestyles is that I did go to work with my mom after school.
Hmm.
That 3 to 7 window,
A lot
3 to 9
can
window.
and especially in those winter months when it get dark early.
Yeah, because mom is working, nobody's at home. She don't know what you're doing. Wasn't cell phones like
We
that.
were latchkey kids.
That's right. So she had us with her primarily because she needed the help, but I know that God was like, nah, let me
I
get them
think your
going. So
mom
we learned
knew
how
it
to
was
clean.
both, because then she knew she
She
also didn't
probably.
have to worry about y'all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So I love this. So like, what we're talking about too is like that emotional suppression in black men and how is rooted in like early conditioning, right?
Mhm.
And also, let's talk about like some of the other implications. Like that can lead to chronic stress, isolation, and also issues with like anger mismanagement. And just like what does that look like when you think about your clients that come to you in therapy?
Yeah, it definitely, you see the manifestation of all of that. And a lot of my clients have found a way to do pretty well for
Hmm.
themselves. But when they get to me, they're having a hard time maintaining it
Hmm.
because they're unraveling
Hmm.
emotionally. They're unraveling, mentally because they're code switching. right? Because they're subscribing to traditional views of male manhood and masculinity. So, my family can't know that we can't pay this bill, right? Or
Yeah.
that I was up for promotion and it looks like I've been skipped over, right? And so now they're unraveling and now the family is starting to pay for it with the attitude, the behavior, how they're presenting
Yeah.
and things like that. And then those we talked about cortisol, those stress levels are
Mhm.
up, mixed with poor diet and substance use. And now we have, we're in a bind. And that all is happening simply because there's no safe space.
Yeah.
Man.
So, how do you talk with your clients about creating that safe space, about having those honest conversations, and to be able to like admit those limitations with their loved ones, with their partners?
Yeah. A lot of times it comes out very organically. It's really interesting. One of the things that I'm learning is by the sheer act of disclosing
Mhm.
how you're feeling. I'm
Mhm.
not talking about me, maybe my clients, but with my clients, when they begin to learn how to disclose how they're feeling in therapy, it becomes a lot more organic for them to do it with their
Yeah.
spouses. And what I love about it is I can stop them and say, "Man, you are doing some great work right here." And then I can say, "Now, when you go to try to translate this to your spouse,
Mhm.
you may or may not get the type of reaction that you desire, but your goal here is just to get it out."
Yes.
And the way that I'm helping set ground for you to do that,
Mhm.
you can set ground for your spouse by saying, "I got some hard stuff to say. I've been holding it in. I just need to get it out. And I don't know what I expect for you to do with it right now,
Mhm.
but I was able to do this in therapy. I need to do it with you." Or whatever the
Yeah.
dynamic is.
Yeah.
And that it starts to happen organically within a session and it starts to translate like
Mhm.
that into real life.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say is that just the act of coming to therapy helps to normalize that expression, that self-disclosure, and to
Yeah.
normalize vulnerability and that like
Yeah.
an interpersonal communication and effectiveness like that expression.
Most certainly,
Yeah.
most certainly.
That's beautiful. And being able to create that space for them is really, really important.
Man, it's a blessing every single time.
Mhm.
I love it. It's almost like a training ground.
Yes, it is. It really
Yeah,
is.
yeah, and, it's almost a utopian experience for a lot of
Mhm.
people because it's like, there's no other place here that I'm able to do this like
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
and so I'm grateful to be able to create those spaces.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, right? Like
Mhm,
what led you to pursue like therapy and mental health personally and professionally? You spoke about it
mm,
a little bit, but like, it goes deeper to decide I'm gonna go to school, pay this tuition, do these two
mhm.
years. Like there's more that's to it.
Yeah, no. So on a very surface level, because I feel like I'm an extrovert, but there's a lot of introvertedness to me as
Okay.
well, which leads to really just me being kind of a quiet individual from time to time. And I noticed throughout my entire life, whenever I would be to myself in a public space, people would just start to come up and tell me their life story
Yeah.
or ask my advice about some serious topic in their life, and so I think one day I was young. I saw Dr. Phil on TV and I'm like, this guy gets paid to do this?
Yes, he
This is
does.
what I'm doing on the playground, like so on a surface
On the
level,
playground, Mario. You was
like
Dr.
on the
Phil on the
playground, legit,
playground.
like 7, 8, 9 years old,
You right, because
in
I was
school.
a peer mediator at elementary school. You right,
See?
you right.
It finds you,
Uh-huh.
they find you. And so I'm like, so then that caused me to just begin to dream about, wow, I can actually make a living helping guide people. Like, and it always felt amazing for somebody to come back to me and say, I really appreciate you. It wasn't always solving a problem.
Right.
It was more so like in their own ways telling me, thanks for listening without judging me. Right. And so that helped right there. Here's another one, the ability in my own life experience to be able to go through difficult things,
Mm.
process them without much help from anyone,
Mhm.
and process them and then come out on the other side better than I was when I went through it.
Yeah.
So I've gotta attribute that to God, like raising me. He took over a parental
Yeah.
role and helped guide me through this.
Mhm.
But noticing, looking around and seeing not everybody's able to do that.
Yeah.
And so there must be something here to this must be one of my gifts.
Yes,
And so,
exactly.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
gift and calling, right? Because when you think about the spiritual gifts,
Mhm.
this work that you and I do, it's included in that, right?
Yeah.
But then also, like you're saying too, it being a calling. Because
Man.
everybody's
Yeah.
not equipped. And like you said, the people just happen organically. And you just think that you're being you. And then, like you said, and it's funny that you mentioned Dr. Phil. One of my cousins, I can't remember, we had to be like early teens. And her then boyfriend, he is her husband now. But he was like, "Oh, you gonna call Dr. Phil?" Talking about me.
Mhm.
So the
Wow.
Dr. Phil reference definitely resonates in a different way. So Mario, talk to me about like what generational messages did you have to really like confront to do your own healing, and also maybe what you see in the work with your clients?
One of those messages that I had to confront was the presence in my generational line of ignorance.
Okay. Now that's real
So
broad, but I know you're gonna break it down.
I'll break it
Yeah.
down. So, specifically contending with why my father was not able to be present and mentor me through life the way I felt like he should.
Mhm.
So I'll give you an example. One time we were living in Maryland in Silver Spring area. We had a townhome that we were renting out and something needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
And we were going to have to help pay for it or whatever the case was. But I felt like, man, if I could fix
Yeah.
this, then we wouldn't have to go this more expensive route and wouldn't even have to talk to the landlord about it or whatever the case was.
Mhm.
So the thought of me being able to fix it, I knew at that point in time I didn't know how to fix it.
Mhm.
So I'm saying in my head, I was thinking in my head, man, I wish that growing up I would have had a dad that would
Mhm.
have taught me how to fix things
Yeah.
so that I could solve this problem, right? Once again, feeling inadequate because I'm like, I'm a man. Men are supposed to know how to fix
You were a
things.
child though.
Yeah, right, right. So before I could even get the entire thought out, I feel like God interrupted in my spirit and said, "Well, your dad didn't know how to do that.
Oh.
So how was he going to teach you?" Which led to the thought process that I think helped save my entire life perspective, which
Mhm.
is it was always going to be this way for me.
Oh.
It was never going to be different from how my life outcome had happened to that point,
Yeah.
which could be a bit depressing for some, but the way God gives things to you, it was like, it's not your fault. And it's not your dad's fault. And it's probably not his dad's fault either.
And I got you.
Yes. Yes, that you, who you are, and what you give or can offer to the world, to your home, to your community is exactly what I always wanted you to do, to offer, to be who I wanted you to be. So you're not lacking because you don't know how to fix, because you have everything you need to be who I've called you to be already.
And fix
That
them that
was
type
so
of fixing. You do a different fixing.
yes. Yes, and I wanna speak to a black man right now who doesn't know how to do something, and when he thinks of passing whatever he's gonna pass on to his children, yeah, you don't know how to do you're not equipped to do this, but there are some things that you're definitely equipped to
Yeah.
do. I love people. My son will not learn how to fix cars by me, most likely. We can experiment together.
And we have a different generation. We could pay the people to fix it, where before we had to know how to do everything. We don't know we don't have to do that. And I think you are at that point in a, and even maybe your father, in a generation where that started to change. You don't have to know how to do everything anymore.
Right, and I I can what I can pass down to my son is how to deal with people,
Yeah.
how to treat people,
Yeah.
how to read people, right? How to inspire people. You know, I can pass that down, and that's all God ever wanted me to do. That's who He made me to
A
be
vessel.
in. So
Mhm.
that was so freeing that day to understand it was always meant to be this way.
Mhm.
That the and so that ignorance of who I am, the ignorance of what we do or do not know is not something that God is pinning us for not knowing. Society might have its thought about it, but God always has a plan. You are who you're supposed to
Yeah.
be, and you offer to the world what He intended and ordained for you to offer. Yeah,
That's
it's been
so
so free.
Mario, that's so good. And you have just set somebody free with that. And it also speaks to how being a man is and being a black man is not a monolithic experience. It's not the same for everyone. We all have
No.
our purpose and God has a plan for all of us. We all have our divine assignments here on earth. And if we are
Yeah.
busy comparing and trying to be what everyone else is, we're robbing the world of
Yeah.
that special, some kinda that God has put in each
Yeah.
and every one of us. So let's talk a little bit about how therapy can help Black men to be more present in their relationships and in their communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of touched on that
Mhm.
in that another addendum, another thing that you get when you come into therapy is you get the practice of what it looks like to be present,
Mm.
right? And even though the therapeutic relationship is its own different dynamic,
Yeah.
you are once again practicing how to identify a safe space or a safe
Mhm.
person, right? You are also able to experience what happens when someone is able to respond back to you without judgment or
Yeah.
bias, right? And so this is an incubation, of sorts, because in this there's a development, there's a rewiring happening,
Oh, yeah.
resetting that is taking place because you're now experiencing, oh man, this person on the other end is able to relate even though they didn't experience that same thing. So it takes away a lot of our preconceived notions that I can't talk to them because they don't know what I'm going through.
Mm.
Like, and then it helps you identify how to show up in those spaces and who to give that type of energy to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so rich. And as I'm thinking here about just like different scriptures and things that apply, Proverbs 11:14 comes to mind. And
Mhm.
sometimes depending on our life experiences, like the scripture can literally apply. And then sometimes,
Yep.
we got to kind of like interpret it, right? But like that says, where there is no guidance, a people fit, or excuse me, a people fall, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety, right? So this gets to what you're talking about with your father didn't know to teach you, but then
Mhm.
also the importance of like, also seeking wise counsel, that there is safety in that and being able to find those spaces and to be able to like normalize coming into therapy, right? Like, and I'm a firm believer of like God and therapy, right? Like, because people just be like, well,
Mhm.
God or Jesus is my counselor. And God has definitely put people like yourself and me in place to be able to be there to like help, right? To be like the
Yeah.
professional that's trained in the other way, understand the beliefs and really just support folks. Because breaking cycles, it really does require the acknowledgement of our lived experiences of grief and being able how to let that go, because if no one's taught you that, you don't have to carry it all. And yes, we can always talk to God about things. And He has you and I here too to be able to give people skills on how to be able to do that. And sometimes, Mario, we even have to reparent ourselves.
Oh yeah, most certainly. And you're talking about this we talked about rewiring, we're talking about undoing,
Yeah.
right? And what I tell a lot of my clients is it took a community of people, whether it was positive or
Uh
negative,
huh.
to help shape you in the ways in which you're trying to undo.
Yeah.
It's going to take a community of people to help you undo what has been done.
Mhm.
I tell people all the time, if God wanted us to do things and live in a vacuum, he certainly wouldn't put us on the planet with 8 billion people on it. The implication alone is that we need each other. And so us trying to do life in a silo isn't practical.
Mhm.
There's almost nothing on the planet that lives that way.
So good.
And so in order to undo, we need a community to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I use similar language, right? We have to unlearn and relearn. So I love it. So you need a safe space to unlearn and a safe space to relearn. Because we got to
Yeah.
replace, right? Because a lot of times what happens is that we remove things, then it's just empty. And if we don't put something healthy in,
Mhm.
we're going to go back to our old habits because we've not given them. So, like when we remove, we have to replace it with something healthy. So there's not a gap that's there.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's another scripture in James,
Okay.
I think it's chapter 1, but it's talking about temptation, but it presents an imagery there that I think is relevant to what we're talking about. And it says, "We are tempted when we are drawn away and given over to," it says, "to our evil desires,"
Mhm.
right? But the picture there that it paints is one of a predator singling out its prey.
Okay.
And so you have this imagery there of maybe a lion, perhaps,
Mhm.
seeing a herd of bison or whatnot and finding one and helping, creating an atmosphere where they're singled out so that then they are now attacked because they don't have
Right.
community, right?
That's good.
See that in that text there, that anytime we fall to ourselves, anytime we're not showing up as our best selves in this process, it's oftentimes because we are siloing ourselves
Mhm.
and we're not taking advantage of that community that would help steer us to unlearn and relearn.
Mhm.
And so I'm a huge advocate, of finding that community and or creating that community through the therapeutic experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, yeah.
I love how you use the bison in that example, and it worked.
I ate you?
You
Yeah, yeah.
know, right?
Right.
And I also heard in there about, like, sometimes the dangers of isolation. We
Yeah.
need to be in community, and we are designed we're wired for connection, like you said.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your relationship with God and what that looks like in your healing, and also what you've seen with your clients and their relationship with God and how that's been a part of their healing process.
Yeah, so, my practice is not is not advertised as a Christian practice, and so
Well,
I'm
go
never
ahead, plug your practice again.
Fresh Start Counseling.
Okay.
Uh, at Fresh Start, I don't really advertise as such, but when someone opens that door and
Mhm.
starts talking faith, they give me permission to talk faith with them. Now we get to institute it. But
Yeah.
in my experience, I really believe, and I said it earlier, that I feel like God just took over as the parenting. And I feel like I have been led this entire way by him very intentionally. And I hear from him in prayer, right? And study of the word. But he shows up in any and everything. He'll show up in a rap song, he'll show up in a pop
There.
song, the revelation will come through anything. And I
Mhm.
love how he does that. He meets you. This is the essence of social work, right? He meets you
Where
where
you
you're
are.
at.
Huh?
Yeah, and I love that, and I just wanna encourage somebody who's, listening, like, you don't have to go find God. All you need to do is allow him to sit with you, meet you exactly where you are, and that is
Mhm.
kind of the mitochondria of how I operate
Mhm.
professionally.
Yeah.
And so I tell people who struggle with whether or not they should go to therapy or not, and they are believers, said if one of the components of prayer is not just you speaking,
Mhm.
but also you learning how to be silent so that God can respond. And when you have that dual component there of not just you speaking, but also having an atmosphere where you can listen,
Mhm.
he's going to lead you. You may not hear an audible voice that says go to therapy, right? But he's going to lead you to places of healing. Psalm 23 says, he leads me beside still waters, right? And as sheep, he knows that sheep do not know how to drink. They will not drink with moving water because it startles them, because they are prey. So they're anxious. They're very
I didn't know
anxious.
that part about the water.
Yeah. So he leads you beside still waters. In other words, whatever your circumstance is, whatever your background, wherever you're coming from, whatever you're going through, the shepherd will make sure that he leads you to a path that allows you to heal, for you to rest,
Yeah.
right? And so now you're trying to figure out, what does that look like? Anyone in your life that doesn't allow you to rest? Anything in your life that does not produce healing? Any
Or
place
peace.
that or peace, right? Now you're identifying. And so I love that about God, is that he will lead you through your prayer, through your time, through your community. He will lead you to those places that you need to be rejuvenated.
Mario,
Yeah.
so good because I don't know if I forget what exactly it says in the scripture leading up to it in its other places where it says like the sheep know their shepherd's voice, right?
Yes.
And then also shepherds know the sounds of their sheep, which
Yeah.
at the relationship with God and that we hear him and he hears
Hmm.
us, that it is
Yeah.
two ways. And
It's beautiful.
you're right, it's not always audible. It's a thing. Like we feel the urge, the nudge, and when you are quiet, when you're in the
Yeah.
silence, like you're saying, like you can feel it, you can hear, you can catch that download.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's one of the things that we're missing in general in society, is just the promotion or the creating the space where we are able to be quiet. So much can happen. And I know why we're not, right? Because when we're quiet, we have to contend with those thoughts, right? We have whatever our issues are face to face, and we have to hear from them, right? But that's when the healing really
but
starts.
that's also right, exactly. That's it. And Mario, something that I've been experiencing for years and I really just got like context to it, like all the years where I was waking up before the sunrise,
Mm,
that's that sacred time with God.
yeah.
So, like, like, cause I would always be like, nothing's happening. Why? I would force myself to go back to sleep, not
Mhm.
embracing if I'm being awakened, it's for a reason. And not
Yeah.
understanding that that was a divine awakening, that God was trying to awake me from a spiritual slumber to hear. Because what happens when you're being awakened, like between like 3 and 5 or whatever, between the before the sun is up, it's quiet. There's no
Mhm.
one to distract you. There's nothing to disrupt you. Back in the day, the TV would just be fuzz or the lines on the TV. There was
Right.
nothing. You had nothing but quiet, right? And so, like, that is such an important time to really be able to do that, but also to get clarity
Yeah.
because he wants
Yeah.
to talk with us. He wants to be in relationship with us. And I think those times when we're being awakened at these odd hours of the night, that people talk about, that's a divine invitation. God is
It
inviting
is.
you to a private party.
That's it. That's right. That's right. And we have the opportunity to connect with him during those times, and it's amazing some of the things that can happen as a result of it. So most certainly. Most certainly.
Man, man. Okay. So what does it look like to like make room for prayer for yourself as well as like because you said you don't advertise your services as like Christian, faith led,
Mhm.
spiritually based, but like, so what does that look like in your life and as well as in like in community to help with healing?
So most certainly, when someone reveals that's the type of path that they're on, I have engaged in prayer with
Mhm.
my clients before at the end of a session, but really just meeting them wherever they are spiritually, and encouraging their practices or whatnot. And there's a lot of shame surrounding religion, and there's a lot of trauma surrounding
Mhm.
religion. And so some of the work that I love to do when someone opens that part of them up to me is really trying to explore some of the shoulds that they feel heavy, the shame and the
Yeah.
burden of should. I should be going back to church. I should, whatever the case is, and just being able to help free them in that place, to where they're seeing their belief system as a tool of healing,
Yeah.
as a tool of peace, as a tool of sanctuary,
Right.
and not a burden, and so yeah, so that we do I do a lot of work around religious trauma and healing and things like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this has been I love that, number one. And I hear you delicately approach faith, spirituality, and religion in practice, right?
Mhm.
And I want to empower you, maybe. I think that's the word I want to use because this is your practice. So if you
Mhm.
want to outwardly offer it, you can include this in
Mhm.
your intake process. And maybe you do, to ask a question or two. What are your spiritual faith beliefs? Like, do you have them? What is it? Would you like it included in your
Yeah.
experience? Because I definitely, because of course, they always told us at Howard, at least in our years, right? Like, we should all go to therapy too. I intentionally
Mhm.
sought out, when we were in school, I went into a season of grief. That was the beginning of a season of grief for me. And it went on
Really?
for many, 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 many years, like a good 5, 6 years. Every year I lost at least one person, multiple people, or someone got cancer, right? So I was
Wow.
dealing with a lot while we were in school and many years after. And I intentionally sought out a faith based practice. I loved it
Okay.
because then we could just openly talk about everything. And it gave, I feel like, the therapist the openness to be able to say things to me. Wow, God, the way God be leading you, you don't even be paying attention.
Mhm.
Father, thank you for
Right.
never taking your hands off of me. But
Yeah.
to say that you could do the same, right? Like, you can offer that because when
Mhm.
we were starting out, we're used to operating by other people's rules, but it's not by mistake at all that you are who you are and your
Yeah.
beliefs, and that you can offer that. And it's you the boss. Well, he the boss. He your boss
Right.
now.
Right.
Operating in freedom.
Yeah.
God
No,
is your
I
boss.
appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that affirmation and admonishment. I do have it in my intake process, and I often allow them to initiate it.
Mhm.
But please believe when they do, we in there.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, no, you're right. And it just is often a very enriching time
Mhm.
because we are spiritual
Yes,
beings,
we are.
and really, I believe everything happens in the spirit realm and it just manifests itself in the physical realm,
Absolutely. And that's
you
why
know?
with my practice, my tagline is where mind, body, and spirit align.
Mm,
Because we are all of those things. And like therapy and like religion, theology, faith, however you want to refer to it, people think it has to be a or when really it's an and. And
yes,
when we bring both of those things together, that intersection, that is where true healing can happen and it brings things into balance. It really and truly
most
does.
certainly.
Okay.
Most certainly.
So let's talk a little bit about safe spaces, brotherhood, and support. So, as a therapist, how do you create safe spaces for men to show up fully? And what do you think contributes to the struggle that Black men have with like creating brotherhood and community?
Yeah, it seems to me that black men are starting to be able to develop community, or maybe we've in some ways always been able to develop community, but
Yeah.
the depth to which we go in our community has not always been there in terms of how we allow ourselves to process some of our thoughts, how we support each other through some of those thought
Uh-huh.
processes. I mean, a lot of times we're just bouncing things off of one another and we're not really responding to it. And so for me, I like to play basketball.
You
And oh yeah, I probably hoop 3 or 4 days a
go
week.
ahead, Mario.
Yeah, yeah, I have to show you some I have to send you some footage. No, but I create, so I seek out those places.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was tough when I made the transition back to Ohio from Maryland was just being able to find that type of community because at least 3 nights a week, man, we were showing up and I was a part of a group that actually would have a 15 or 20-minute Bible-based discussion
Love,
before we played ball.
love it.
Yeah. So those are some of the ways that I find community. You hold on to your good friends. If you got one,
Yes.
hold on to them and create opportunities as much as possible to be able to nurture that relationship. But for me, part of my calling, I believe, And I was just talking to my best friend about it the other day. And he said, and we were talking about how we believe that God calls us to communion with him
Mm,
and then empowers us to be community
come
and
on.
communion to our
Come
community,
on.
right? So we sit with him, we glean from him,
Mhm.
and then we go out and we become and we create community by our very existence.
Yes.
And so for those of us who are on an active healing journey, you're not just healing for yourself, you are becoming a community for someone else
Mhm.
to help facilitate their healing process as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, and that brings to mind Ecclesiastes 4, 9, and 10. Two are better than one. If either of them falls, one can help the other up, right? And this is why we
Yeah.
need to be in community because those people, like you said, you had that community 3 times a week. These people saw you. So that also means they know what it looks like when Mario's not showing up the way he's necessarily showing up. Let me check on my brother.
Literally got a text last week from a guy that I didn't interact with a lot, but hey man, haven't seen you out. I didn't see you out 2 days ago. Is everything cool?
Mhm.
Like, man, and when I left Maryland, a guy reached out to me, man, it's just not the same without you here,
Yeah.
and I needed that because I was feeling like life wasn't the same without me having
I mean,
them.
and it's not, right? Because just as much as you were pouring into them, they were pouring into you. It was reciprocal.
It really
And
was.
anytime you come back, you can always go, you know where they're gonna be. You can pull up on them and that thing is there. But also, you know what? They could come see you in Ohio.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Listen, there's a study that was just released, and I'm gonna have to try to find it.
Okay.
It was whatever the most, I don't know how to explain it. It was a scientific study that was
Hmm.
done on prayer
Okay.
and whether or not prayer impacts individuals, and if so, to what extent, and including distance. And they had a set of individuals in the United States praying for a number of individuals in India, and they were able to identify mood changes, attitude shifts, and everything as a result of being prayed for.
Stop. Did they know
Yeah,
they were being prayed for?
they did not.
Come on, Holy
See,
Spirit.
it's really interesting, and this is easy. Once you can Google it, it's out there. I was able to see it. I just am not able to name it right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
Don't have
yeah.
my
Share
hands
it
on it. It's
later.
just yeah. But and so the impact of prayer on mood, attitude, outlook, and across the world. It's just so not only do we need physical community, but that faith part with being able to intercede for somebody.
Mhm.
And I want to encourage my men, women, our people, we need each other,
Yes.
and our faith and how we exercise our faith, and especially in prayer, matters,
Yes.
and it's showing up in the science
And the
at this point
science.
now.
It's
Yeah.
measurable. Yes. Thank you so
Yes.
much for talking about that importance of peer support and how that is a protective factor in mental health and well-being.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of like wrap this up and talk a little bit about like
Okay.
emotional freedom and living healed but not hardened, right? So, what do you think emotional freedom looks like professionally when you think about your clients, but also you personally, right? Like, because you disclosed how some of your work, your calling is also tied to your lived experience.
Yeah. When so I guess it's almost one and the same, but emotional freedom is not just the ability to allow yourself to emote
Hmm.
or to feel whatever it is that you're feeling, but it's also being able to name it and
Yes.
be honest with yourself if what you are naming it is not actually what it is. So I feel angry, but am I actually angry? Am I hurt? Right?
Anger is usually the response to what the true feeling is.
Yeah. So giving yourself the freedom to feel
Mm,
without judgment or shame,
mm.
but then also learning how to identify and name it so that you're able to figure out. Because when you're able to identify it, then you're able to identify what you need to do next
Yes.
as a result of. Yeah. So if you don't know how to identify what it is,
Yep.
well, first of all, if you don't even feel free enough to feel it, you're going to emote. That's the part right there. It's going to come out somehow.
Always manifest. The body
Always.
keeps score.
Yes, it does. So one way or another, it's coming out.
Mhm.
So if it's going to come out, then I need to learn to be okay with the fact that it
Yep.
is, and I need to learn how to identify what it is. And then a lot of the questions about what I need to do next are also
Yes.
answered as a result of that.
Mario, what you get at is what I do at the beginning of all my therapy sessions, and I call it the tap in. And
Mm,
you might have learned a little bit about it, but they called it the mindful check-in at Embark, right?
okay.
How are you
Yes.
feeling? How do you know? And how and where are you experiencing it in your body and or being?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
always tells me, like, at the beginning of a session, how or where I need to go. Are we picking up where we left off or has something new? Like, where are you present? And in a lot of my clients, not a lot, enough of my clients, they don't know. They're just, I'm okay, I'm fine. That suppression thing. And it's not just men. They don't
Yeah.
know. Or they're like, you know what? I don't even know. Or they automatically, I'm sorry. I changed my question because the before I used to say, how are you doing? That's what we would say. How are you doing?
Hmm.
And it was in a session that a client was like, "I don't wanna talk about what I'm doing. I wanna talk about what I'm feeling kinda." And I was or she was like, can we change the question?" I was like, "That's really what I wanted to ask you. And thank you
Hmm.
so much because you're right.
Right.
Because we don't have to do I really do wanna know how you're feeling. Where are you in
Yeah.
this moment?" And so just doing that, right? Like that even the change of that question, it removes the burden to feel like everything is productivity, everything is output. We have to be producing. Like, yes, we were put here to create, right? Like, because even God, in the
Yeah.
beginning, God, what created? That's the first action verb we get in the Bible, created, right? And we're
Right.
made in his image. So we are to also create, but he also put in a day of rest. So we don't have to
Right.
always do. Um,
No.
I love what you're saying about being able to label it because then we know how to take care of ourselves, but then also communicate it to others and be supported and
Yes.
be
Most
supported.
certainly.
So how do you stay grounded so that you can continue to operate in purpose and help others heal?
I've made a transition in my life from being I guess I was a very, in a way, passive
Okay.
individual. And just noticing through healing, through therapy, through, working through my issues that has not been positive for me. So now what I try to do is I try to get on top of whatever it is that I'm experiencing. So if it's something with my spouse, if it's something with a, job or whatever the case is, I just go ahead and either shoot that email or I try to have that conversation
Yeah.
immediately. This is how I'm feeling based off of what has taken place. It's not leaving things to chance and not allowing yourself. There's a difference between being nice and kind.
Tell me
Okay.
what that means to you.
Okay. So a nice person is accommodating and to a point oftentimes where they are sacrificing beyond what it is that they're able to give.
Ooh, overextending.
Yes. A kind person is always kind, but they have healthy boundaries. So how it manifests
Mhm.
is "N- no, I'm not able to take on that project that we're late on implementing and now it's the last minute and you're going out of town. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry that this is happening to you, but I'm not able to do that. I don't have the time, I don't have the bandwidth. That's not something that I'm able to do right now, right? I'm kind about how I'm conveying that information,
Mhm.
right? But I also have healthy boundaries because I know what I'm capable of or
Yeah.
what I'm willing to do, right? Man, we've been together for a while, but we've had several conversations about how I'm just really feeling disrespected. And I feel like either we need to take a break or we're at an impasse right now because, and so I'm always kind about how I'm doing things, but I'm not allowing people to walk over me. I'm not overextending
Yeah.
myself. That has been huge in me in my healing journey. Yeah.
Oh, those boundaries, man, they change lives. But when you
Yes.
grow up and you don't have boundaries and it's not normalized to, one, understand what a boundary is. Because sometimes when you don't grow up with boundaries, you can be upset with people who do have boundaries and you don't know you're
Yes.
the unhealthy one.
Yeah.
But then when you do learn it, the value of it and that like it's a negotiation, like, not right now is still a yes. Right. Like,
Mhm.
and we have to learn to negotiate that, but sometimes we didn't feel like we could.
Yeah.
Well, Mario, I really and truly want to thank you for being here, right? So I have a couple more questions because this has been so good and I know it's going to bless so many people. What do you want Black men and those who love Black men to understand about the work that you do, about the importance of mental health?
Man, I think that I want them to know that pursuing therapy, allowing yourself to um embrace your healing journey
Mhm.
really is the safe space that you've been looking for. It doesn't feel that way when you're now contending or undoing or relearning or unlearning, right? That doesn't feel comfortable.
Mhm.
But every victory that you have with that, when you show up into that space and you embrace this part of your journey, you will begin to create the safe space. Watch this, that the world has not created for us, Black men or Black women, Black people.
Yes.
The truth is that outside of our own community and outside of our intentionality and our healing journey, there's really no place on the planet
Mm.
that we're able that facilitates our experience. But you can create one.
Yes.
You can link up with your creator and he can provide, God can provide the people, the places, and the things that you need in order to go from surviving to
That's
thriving,
it.
right?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
And thank you so much for reminding our audience and empowering our audience to understand that post traumatic healing and growth are viable options and they have the ability to create it for themselves. And that with support, Black men, since this is the population we've been talking about, but they can rewrite their narrative to go from woundedness to wholeness, and that God is definitely a way, like he is the ultimate healer, right? Like, so that
yeah,
it's available to us all. So
yeah,
if you could leave the audience with one powerful truth to help them to rise and thrive, what would it be? I know the last one was a really good gem that you left, but
yeah.
like one powerful truth that could help them with rising and thriving.
Yeah, there's a quote by James Baldwin, and just I want to do it justice by reading it. It says, I am what time, circumstance, history have made of me."
Ooh,
It says, "Certainly, but I am also much more than that, and so are we all."
yeah.
Right? I love it because it embodies the healing process.
Mhm.
It is an admission of what the truth is, that I've come from this, my daddy was this, my mama was this, I've done these things.
Mhm.
I am most certainly a product of my environment, my circumstances, but I'm also much more than that.
Yeah.
So much more than that. And it also gives way to allowing for there to be a shift that takes place.
Yeah.
And so I want to say, as we are healing, watch this. We come broken, we come
Mm,
angry, and that is a very violent
mhm,
process to live in that, right? But shifting, healing is also a very aggressive process. So it manifests differently
mhm.
sometimes, right? And so our spouses, the women in our lives, the people in our lives, as men, and when we are embracing this journey, understand that it is an aggressive pursuit. In order to undo, you have to be intentional. It's like working out. You want to drop fat. There's certain things I'm just not going to eat. And there's a certain way that I've got to attack at the gym in order to see those results.
Mhm.
And so, as I'm undoing, as I'm relearning, as I'm growing and establishing this new person,
Mhm.
it can be aggressive, it can be intense, and that's
Yeah.
okay. You're channeling the negative energy into something
Yeah.
positive. Yeah.
That's so good. Well, Mario, thank you so much for being here today. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have you back again because I feel like we've only scraped the surface with this. And this is a really good intro conversation because we didn't even really get into like real tangible ways. Because for some people, listening to this is the only therapy that they may get or may have access to.
Mm.
So I would love to have you back at a later time to talk more about it, and just what that looks like in action in everyday life for folks. So
All right.
we're going to move into our closing. And so I always close with a call to action for our audience. And so first, we're going to start with the reflection. What narratives about strength, silence, and struggle have you believed? And what emotions have you buried that need space to be seen and healed? And then, second, y'all know it's always action, it's always something for y'all to do next. I want you to look for, if you're in this space and if you're ready, look for a culturally competent therapist and begin journaling your story if you're not ready to go into therapy, right? But also normalize just checking in with your community, with your brothers, whatever your community looks like, and to create your own space of healing. And lastly, I want to send you all out of here with an affirmation. You are not broken. You are becoming. God is not intimidated by your emotions. Freedom, mental, emotional, and spiritual, are always available and they are waiting for your yes. So thank you all again for tuning in to another episode of Rise and Thrive with Dr. J. Nicole. I want to encourage you to follow, subscribe, and to continue to rise in faith and thrive in purpose. And you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. And share this with anyone that you think might benefit. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Episodes drop every Tuesday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I want to thank you again one more time, Mario, for joining us. And let the people know how they can connect with you if they want to stay connected.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok at Mario Speaks Life. And so you can find me there. Also, you can Google Fresh Start Counseling. If you are in Ohio or Maryland, you can Google Fresh Start Counseling, my name, and it'll pop up. And there's a very straightforward and easy way to be able to connect with me through my company. So I hope that I'm able to walk with some of you in your journey.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in for another episode of Rise and Thrive with Dr. J. Nicole. And we'll see you next time.